Hello, everybody. Bonjour. If
Hello,
you have some
everyone.
news from Maria Ressa, please call the police. Or before calling the police, tell us. We will. Our team is looking for her, but she will join. At the end, Maria always arrives. So we are gathered here today, and we are very glad for this. Oh, I saw hands. She's coming. Oh, she's coming through this door. Okay. So maybe we can wait another 10 seconds. Is there a specific jingle for the entry of Maria? No. So I will just introduce. We are gathered here for the launch. Oh. No. You know, this is a strategy. Maria always does it. She's a bit late so that everybody says, oh, incredible, she's here.
Sorry.
So we are here for the launch of the Paris Charter on AI on journalism. I'm not able to say if this moment will be an historical moment, but this is at least an important moment. After 5 months of work, chaired by Maria Ressa, thanks again, Maria, we are proud to announce the very first international ethical reference in the field of AI and journalism, which includes 10 fundamental ethical principles to protect the integrity of news and information in the AI age and preserve the social function of journalism. Technological innovation doesn't inherently lead to progress. It must be steered by ethics to truly benefit humanity. Some media outlets have already established their own principles. Those principles are sometimes contradictory or biased principles. First and foremost, in an economic logic. This initiative is really cross-functional and does transcend media functions. The Charter answers or addresses problems that I do not have to explain now. But just I want, before giving the floor to Maria, say that this is a team effort. It has been a team effort. A work of 22 prominent persons from 20 countries who are specialists in journalism or AI or AI, united around a clear goal. And I want to really thank each of them. All of the people here around this table, with the exception of myself, are part of this committee. And we have other people in the room that were part of this committee, and I will start by mentioning them. Lars Beuring, who is the director of the European Journalism Center in the Netherlands. Thank you, Lars, for being here and for being part of this effort. And Justyna Kurzabinska, who is the head of the strategy and the transformation of information of the EBU. Thank you, Justyna, too. Very quickly, from my left to my right, we have with us, I was about to say tonight because of it's a bit dark here, but this afternoon, Mira Milosevic, who is the head of the GFMD. We also have Anna Möllers, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the German Journalists Association. Anna is with us on behalf of the European Federation of Journalists. We have Eric Scherer, who is the chair of the News Committee at the European Broadcasting Union and a director of News Media Lab at France Télévisions and International Affairs as well. And we have Antonio Zapula, who is the head of the Thomson Foundation.
Thomson Reuters.
Thomson Reuters. I had a moment of hesitation, that's why, and it wasn't anymore on my papers. Sorry, Antonio. Thomson Reuters Foundation. So thank you for all of you. And I immediately give the floor to Maria. Maria, you do so much.
No, actually, Arthur and RSF has done so much. And the panel, this incredible panel. I mean, first of all, my deep apologies. The International Fund for Public Interest Media took longer, and so apologies, I was late. But I think, Christophe has laid out, this was an initiative that was originally pulled together by RSF, and then we all jumped in, and I would love for you to hear from everyone. There are 10 points. This is addressed to journalists. And, while we were having the debate, I kept saying, but journalists in general have standards and ethics. If I had my druthers, it would be a lot about tech and what they need to do, but, you get overruled. Thank you. So really, please, I'd love you to see the 10 points that we put in place, and also to hear from the very heated debate that we had. Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work of the folks here. Please.
Maria was supposed in the agenda to speak 13 minutes. So that's why there is a surprise on this table.
I can speak longer if you want.
She can.
I know. But truly, there are other people. I think the good part about the Paris Peace Forum today is you are seeing forward movement. It's time for us to stop talking and start doing, and I feel like this is what the group has done.
But maybe one question, Maria.
Sure.
What makes this Paris Charter powerful? How can such a charter be impactful?
Yeah. So look, part of what we've seen since 2016 is that news organizations and news heads tend to be absent from the policy debates that is roiling our industry. So that was the first part, but the other part is that there is so much that is literally changing in front of our eyes. New code on every single one of the platform, whether it's the old AI on social media or generative AI, it's getting rolled out. If you talk about agile development, you're talking about rolling it out every 2 weeks. And yet we look at it, we're manipulated by it, our behavior changes it because it goes one way or the other. And I think what we tried to do here was to come to a consensus as journalists, as professionals, as advocates of journalists, journalists and news organizations, to say, all right, we're going to have to jump in, because we cannot stay away from it, but what is the right way of doing this aligned with our standards and ethics? I think this is, again, they were very, very vocal in all the discussions, so you should hear from them.
And what are the principles? And there is a list of 10 principles that look really important to probably the 10 of them are very important, but could you just summarize?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, let me give you the 10 points, and you can see how they're pretty universal, right? Journalism ethics guide the way media outlets and journalists use technology. That seems self-apparent, but that's one of the ways you can differentiate a news organization from one that isn't, right? There are more than 500 generative AI news sites, news in quotes, right? So number 2, media outlets prioritize human agency. In Rappler, we rolled out generative AI 3-point bullet point summaries very quietly to see if it hallucinates. It hasn't yet. If you tell it to prompt, it stays on the topic, on the story page. And when we were doing this, we told our people, you will not lose your jobs because of this. 3, AI systems used in journalism undergo prior independent evaluation. We are all going through this, and we first need to, actually this shows you how little we trust the tech. Sorry, I speak for myself. 4, media outlets are always accountable for the content they publish. That seems, again, a no-brainer because we take that responsibility regardless of what the technology has done to us, sometimes to our detriment. 5, media outlets maintain transparency in their use of AI systems. Earlier this year, you had some news organizations in the West actually use generative AI without letting their viewers, their readers know, and you know that there was feedback. Our best defense as a news group is to be transparent. 6, media outlets ensure content origin and traceability. We can't just like pick up like, oh, Antonio heard this from someone who heard this, and here it is. The thing I like the best, and nothing against influencers, media and journalists, we're not influencers. We're not trying to get you to take a side. We will be transparent and we will trace the information because we are liable for that information. 7th, journalism draws a clear line between authentic and synthetic content. It will be man or woman and machine. And you're seeing this. We're seeing this change now under our feet. But news organizations will tell you when it is machine generated. 8, AI-driven content personalization and recommendation upholds diversity and the integrity of information. If you don't know this, right, most of the social media platforms that we are all on that distribute the news are literally biased against groups that are already marginalized in the real world. So this is something that we look at to try to offset, right? We will tell you when that happens. 9, journalists, media outlets, and journalism support groups engage in the governance of AI. We all must. The tech companies will tell you they want to be regulated, but then they leave it. But this is in real time. We are Pavlov's dog, so we must be part of we should jump in. We have data that shows us. And then finally, the number 10 is, this is again a no-brainer. Maybe I should stop saying that. Journalism upholds its ethical and economic foundation in engagements with AI organizations. So, for example, for Rappler, we're one of 10 groups that is working with OpenAI. We were chosen to look at AI and democracy. How can we use large language models for democracy, for consultations on this? It is possible, right? We want to use the best without making it the worst. Those are the 10 principles. They seem to us to be self-evident. Now I won't quote the Constitution. I throw it back to Randy.
Thank you, Maria. So again, these principles were developed by this committee of 22 prominent figures. Among them, we had world-renowned figures in AI, like Stuart Russell and Gary Marcus. You may know them. We had journalism experts, like Anya Schifrin and Charlie Beckett. And in fact, all of them are really prominent, even if I cannot quote all of them. Something is very powerful is that these are also being developed with a lot of partners organizations that are very different. Journalism defense NGOs or media development NGOs. FPU, AJC, AGN, GFMD, the Pulitzer Center, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, a large federation of journalists, the AFJ, a representative organization of televisions on really another continent, the Asian Broadcasting Union, ABU, and consortia of investigative journalists, JJN, ICIJ, and the OCCRP. So it gives really, we do think a big push and impact for this. I will give the floor now to Milosevic from the GFMD, a media development federation organization that also gathers other organizations. So what would you say about this work, what it means, how it can be implemented? Mm-hmm. This is an open question, so it gives you the possibility to really make the comments you want to make.
Thank you, Christophe, and thank you, Maria, for your opening remarks. It was indeed an interesting process, and it's encouraging that we are finally with the journalism and media community at the beginning of the overall development of the AI tools, thinking about the ethical principles. And we're a network of organizations that are coming from more than 60 countries around the world, and we represent those small investigative community journalism organizations that are struggling with the capacity to operate in a current digital environment, let alone in an environment that is coming with the AI. So it was important for us to look at, what are the kind of starting principles that we bring into this and that we want to see developed. And linking to some of the other conversations around AI in this forum, what is the society that we want to see coming and the values that we want to bring into that society going forward? Because I think that we are realizing that this technology will transform not only the way we produce, distribute, and receive information, but a lot of our economy and societal relationships. So that was the reason why we engaged. For us, it's important also to take these principles as a framework. I mean, they're not the end point, but the starting point, and then to look and work with our communities to consult on, what are the real problems that they have and how can they apply this, and then how they can take this into a development of AI tools and usage of AI tools. So I'll stop there. I prepared some of the other points in terms of how do we see the problems that we have in current digital environment translating into the challenges that we might see going into this AI period. So I'll come to that later.
Of course. And you, Anna? No, same questions. As the representatives of the European Federation of Journalists, EFJ, what do you see as the main concerns or challenges for journalism in AI? How can such a normative effort, initiative, be, of course, not one solution for all problems, but just can help save the social function of journalism?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big concerns, of course, is fake news and deep fakes, because the technology is making it so easy to produce content, and also the technology develops so fast, so it's getting more and more difficult to distinguish synthetic content from real content. And one big danger I see, or we see, is that people don't believe in what they see and what they hear, and that they also lose trust in journalism. So therefore, it is very, very important that we have strict transparency rules, and that we make it very, very transparent and draw a clear line if we use synthetic or content and make it obvious. And this is a part of the Charter too. So I think that's a very important point. Another concern concerns personalization. Maria also mentioned it, the danger of manipulation. I mean, with all the data that has been already collected and then combined with AI, generative AI, we already foresee the end of mass media. I mean, we will receive more and more personalized news. Which is great because it fits to my interest, it fits to my knowledge maybe. So it can be also a chance to achieve more people and make them more interested into journalistic content. But on the other hand, it's very easy, and it gets more and more easier and to manipulate people. And because of that, it's very important that we have the possibility to see what kind of algorithm do they use, and also to be able to disable them, or to say no, I don't want this algorithm to apply to me. We have to be aware of that. And third, of course, a big concern is that journalists itself get displaced. I mean, you can use AI to increase the quality of journalism, but you can also use it to reduce costs. And if you imagine that a media company says, well, why should I pay 10 journalists sending them out when I can pay only one who does use AI, makes stories, and then just adds things here and there and see does it hallucinate or not. So there's the danger that journalists get replaced from that point of view. And also we have a problem now because so far AI is trained with journalistic content. And it reads and reads and reproduces them. But so there's a big competition for journalistic content. But there's no reimbursement. The journalists don't get paid for that. So it's more and more difficult for journalists to pay their life, to earn, to live from journalism. So there's a huge danger that the amount of journalists reduces while the amount of content increases, so we don't even see it, and therefore, I think that is very important that we find solutions for remuneration. But this is not only a threat for journalists to be replaced. This is also a threat for society. Because what does a journalist do? I mean, this is another. If there's less journalists in the field, we lose critical opinions. We lose different point of views, and we have more and more content, but we have less real stories. So we might have more content, but it's just a reproduction, and this is what AI does. It's a reproduction of what has already been said, and we have to be very aware of that.
Thank you, Anna. Eric, now your turn. As you had the Media Lab of France Télévisions, the French public TV, you know maybe better than others how newsrooms and journalists currently cope with the revolution that is generative AI.
Well, to tell you the truth, they are coping with it with both curiosity and caution. A lot of curiosity, a lot of enthusiasm to try to use the tools, but also a lot of caution because, to tell you again what we are seeing, they are mainly lost today. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what is permit, what is allowed, what is not allowed. You have to remember, and we all know that today, that the news media has been totally disrupted. First on the distribution side, yes, and now on the production side, meaning on the storytelling side. So that's why very rapid measures are needed to be taken. First, to encourage experimentation. Fine, I think we have to try. And second, to guide and control in-house use by proposing some guidelines, as we are trying to do today for the editorial department, for the newsroom. Again, they are curious, but very often they are powerless vis-à-vis these tools. And I have no doubt that ChatGPT and the other solution will be part of the journalism toolbox very soon, or are already part of how they are doing. But let's make sure at the end of the day that journalists ultimately impose their editorial control. This is absolutely the core of this charter. And we have to, not to impose, but to strongly request the newsroom that human is at the beginning of it, and is at the end of the process. I guess Newsroom have a long history of adopting tools for greater productivity, of course, to have a better communication with the public, with the audience, to improve the writing, to improve the shooting. It's not new. But this new AI is different. This new AI is something by its scale. It's something very, very new, and we have to be careful.
Thanks, Eric. You can prepare your questions after Antonio's words, but do not hesitate to prepare your questions or comments. You will have the capacity, of course, to have exchanges with the panelists. Antonio, you have the floor.
I mean, I think it was an interesting, the making of the charter was really interesting. It wasn't really an echo chamber of people who thinks about doom and gloom and AI is the end of humanity. I mean, we had really long conversations looking at really many aspects from different viewpoints. And I think it really, you know, to quote Biden, is really promise and peril. I think this was really the narrative that we were following when we were drafting this, because there are inevitable opportunities, and quite frankly, the genie is out of the bottle. So we need to make those opportunities happen regardless, right? I think from our perspective, the areas that we are looking with most interest are really around misinformation, the means of production, so how journalism, you know, is affected, you know, the production of the content within the newsroom, with other, obviously, many repercussions on labor, but also on plagiarism, on accountability. And the third one, and perhaps the most important, is trust. And perhaps I will start from trust, because all the latest analysis and reports that come out every year, unfortunately, point to very sad reality that journalism is the most one of the most distrusted professions in the world right now. 50% is the ranking. You know, 50% of people polled by the Edelman Trust Barometer. That's 32,000 people in 28 countries. That's the ranking. You know, 50% of people trust journalism. That percentage drops in Germany, Australia, the UK. If you look at the Gallup survey, only 29% of Americans across the political spectrum trust journalists. If you look at the Reuters Institute data, heavily focus on India, UK, US, so 1 billion internet users, points out to the fact that the majority of the people think that journalists are more interested in either serve a political agenda or spread misinformation or getting attention. They're actually avoiding the news. So I think AI will inevitably affect trust. Trust in what we see, trust in what we are told, trust in one another. And the consequences, going back to your point, for democracies are fundamental, because obviously when the media is distrusted, as society we are divided, and as individuals we are disempowered. The consequences that we see into the way this will affect tools of production are also quite relevant. We are particularly interested in issues of copyright, in issue of plagiarism, in issue of accountability. But also, let's not forget that the media industry has been really burned by the introduction of social media. We're still paying the consequences of the loss of advertising. We're seeing local media disappearing internationally and globally. So I think a big part of the industry looks at AI with healthy skepticism, because they don't want to repeat those same mistakes. And then on the point about misinformation, I think there is one example that I find particularly petrifying, is the example of Jonathan Turley. You might know, an American academic accused in a response produced on generative AI of being essentially a sexual harasser, somebody who harassed a student during a university trip. The response is very detailed, and it quotes a trip that happened in Alaska, and it quotes a Washington Post article from 2018. The problem was that there was no trip to Alaska. There was no Washington Post article ever published in 2018. So when the level of information that the user gets is so detailed and it's so difficult to differentiate reality from falsehood, the consequences, again, on our human agency to make decisions. There's going to be, I lost count of how many elections next year. There's a lot of fear about this being potentially a generative AI fought election next year. So I think we need to be really careful, and these are the three main issues that we're looking at.
Thanks, Antonio. We do not want to be like I don't know if you have this expression in English, but be like rabbits in front of the light of the cars. Comme des lapins devant la voiture, devant les phares de la voiture. Does it exist in English? No. Yes? Oh.
Deer in headlights.
Ah, okay. Oh, dear. Or for us in French, that's rabbits. And so we do not want just to be like either people who just watch at what happens, or just are victims of what happened, even if humanity is not supposed to die. Having self-regulatory normative initiatives is a way to really take a sort of democratic control of what happens. And this is what this initiative intends to do. I want to mention that we have a guy that we should be very grateful with, and this guy is Arthur Grimont-Pont, who is a rapporteur. And thanks, Arthur, for this wonderful work that you've done. I saw that there was already one question before the end of this first round. Please, can you introduce you? Is there a phone that will... a microphone. You have one.
Hi, my name's Mark, and I'm a lead in the Brussels office for Access Partnership. We're a tech policy consultancy, and I've just come from 3 sessions on AI this morning already. I was at the European Global AI Conference hosted by Euronews on Tuesday. I've got 3 quick questions for you. How much of these 10 principles are actually limited to journalism? Because you said it's normative and self-regulatory. Could it actually be used as a leadership thought piece for other industries as well? What are your next steps? Because if we're talking about thought leadership initiatives, trust and safety online, we're in the Paris Peace Forum. And several years ago, there was the Paris call for trust and security online, trust and safety online. So that has a discussion later this afternoon on this. So what are your next steps, say, in 3 or 4 years' time? And the last question that I had is, although this is for journalism, how does it affect media as an industry overall, especially like monitoring organizations and so on and so forth? Your thoughts on that? Thanks very much.
First, Eric, maybe?
Sorry. Yes, on the first question, I think there is a big issue today on regulation. Because we saw the London summit last week, and we listened to the tone of it. And the tone of it was innovation first, regulation second. That was globally, well, roughly what was said. I think it's fine for health, education, maybe, AI to solve climate change, but it is very, very dangerous position for news. And the fact that news was almost not mentioned during this London summit is a big issue. And we hear the same thing in Brussels today. The fact that Europe has already missed so many technical waves, the internet, the social networks. And what we are hearing today is that, okay, we've missed so many waves, we don't want to miss this one. We have some good guys, including in mathematics and in AI. So don't regulate now. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, but we here on this table, we urge the politicians, the parliamentary people, the regulators to regulate, to ask the platforms to be accountable for what they are doing to the information public sphere. It's so important. We have been destroyed by the social networks for the last 15 years, and it was done only by humans. Now it will be done by machines.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and again, I'll back exactly what Eric said, which is we must learn the lessons from what happened with the rolling out of artificial intelligence on social media, and they were just used for modeling. Meaning, you know, they say, well, if you're posting, I'm going to use machine learning to create a model of you, right? And I'm going to take every data point I have, and I'm going to, you know, make my model really good. Get rid of that word model and use clone, because data is everything. That is the new language. It must be the new language of transparency and accountability, right? So did you give anyone permission to clone you? And the reason for that is because they say they used their machine learning, their artificial intelligence. Then AI comes in and takes all of our clones, and that becomes the motherlode database that is used to micro-target you. That is insidious manipulation for money. That is actually, in news terms, that's the corruption of the information ecosystem. And then when the algorithms themselves prioritize the spread of lies over facts, that's that MIT study from 2018, right? 2018, what happened after Elon Musk took over and fired the trust and safety teams, right? And then when that low bar was set, every other tech platform followed. This is why elections will be far more dangerous in 2024. What we're seeing today is kind of like a Brussels effect and the Elon Musk effect, right? And that's not this is in conversation with so many people. The Brussels effect it's playing out in real time right now, right? As soon as October 6th happened, within 2 days, you had Vera Jourova, Thierry Breton write letters to the CEOs of these companies, very much like the top-level stuff. The EU now can take 6% of their global revenues. But that is, how good has that been so far, by the way? Right? Our data is showing us some really alarming problems that is affecting the 18 to 24-year-olds all around the world. The second effect is the Elon Musk effect. And then you can add, like, if you guys have read Mark Andreessen's manifesto, right? This is in Silicon Valley. Mark Andreessen wrote an 11,000-word manifesto, so he's extremely powerful. He finances. He said that the enemy is trust and safety and ethics. So we take a position. We self-regulate because we have standards and ethics. Trust is critical to information integrity. If you take that out, you know, and I haven't gone to what is generative AI, right? This is a discussion we all had, but the problem with generative AI is if social media was moving at exponential speed, generative AI is exponential, right? If just look at OpenAI, GPT-2 was 1.5 billion parameters. So like, you know, a mind can't go through 1.2 billion words before it goes to the next one. GPT-3 is 175 billion parameters. GPT-4, this is where OpenAI got smart and decided not to be transparent. So speculation is it's somewhere between 1 trillion and 100 trillion, right? The human mind, our emotions cannot cope with this. And news organizations, journalists are the first attacked by information operations, by politicians. Sorry, I was just with the government, so I better be nice to governments, you know, for IFPIM. But truly, we are being torn apart. And what we're trying to do, I think, in the charter is to put forward to your first question the principles that are necessary to guard the public sphere. And we ask technology companies and governments to stop abdicating responsibility for the public sphere.
Maria?
I'll continue on that and to your questions on trust and safety online and all the initiatives that we are hearing around us and how does it affect media. It's interesting that we've had this situation that the social value of trusted professional and ethical information hasn't been translated into economic value online in digital economic systems that we have at the moment. And so with the upcoming AI, if we don't have a way to recognize the ethical and trusted actors online and translate that social value into economic value, I think that will be amplified in the AI system. So what does that mean? Not only, as you say, we could be maybe leaders in this. I've talked yesterday with associations of universities, and there is a science council. They're facing similar problems. The information that they are producing is not recognized as a credible information. Then we have an additional layer that is related to safety situation that journalists and media organizations are facing online, and add to that surveillance tools that are becoming more and more sophisticated. And so from that perspective, you also have additional attacks, and so from different authoritarian actors to those actors in Silicon Valley that who think that organizations and groups that have ethical principles are not important. And so if we look at information and information integrity as a public good, going forward, AI is going to be our public infrastructure. And if we want that public infrastructure to work for people, we need to bring some basic ethical principles on how we want it to look like and what it should do for us. And for journalism, again, to be a public good and accessible to all the people, journalists in media also need to be able to have access to this new AI highway. And if we let that happen only in the context of very centralized, monopolized corporate capitalism, we're not going to have that. So, I mean, going back to the basics, the ethical principles are really the starting point of, I like your metaphor, Maria, on this polluted river. To start from the start and not use the cups of, to kind of clean one cup at a time, but start from the main polluter and maybe look at different models that we could have. Look at, for instance, in the context of Europe, not only regulation, DSA, and also European Media Freedom Act that is important, but look at setting up EU AI infrastructure that would be publicly funded, for instance. And maybe we can talk a bit later that media organizations themselves, I think, need to start thinking about developing their own solutions.
Agree.
But maybe, Maria, if you have an important point to make on it, I would do this now. Because you never know if you will have, again, the microphone.
Well, we talk with organizations around the world, and for us it's really important that to put this in the context of smaller markets and smaller organizations that, as you pointed out, don't have capacity to participate in high-level policy talks, don't have capacity to be equal partners when talking to technology companies. What's happening at the moment is that their costs, for instance, of using tech and using these tools are growing exponentially. And so in a couple of years, an investigative journalism organization will not be able to afford to compete with malicious actors, even to access these tools. And so these are things that we need to be thinking about now. So we need to flip this conversation around big tech and technological solutions from how do we convince big tech to be good, to how do we actually look at our own solutions and how do we convince governments to invest in this? How do we convince investors to invest in this? And how do we all work together to represent this industry and this sector and journalists and media in the policy sphere? So those are three big ones.
I do apologize. I called you twice.
Maria.
You have Maria. And Maria is here. Mira.
Yes.
So sorry for this. Is there any comment or question in the room? Oh, yes, on this side.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jorge, former mathematician. I'm now working as an artificial intelligence consultant, but moving more to the management and governance point of view. And I have one question. This is a self-regulating initiative. do you foresee a way to enforce it? Like you have the law and the enforcement. How can we guarantee that it's going to put in practice? And on the other side, more complex, how, I think, Mira, you were just talking about this, beyond the reflection and how we can regulate the companies, how do you think, or where do we have a point of leverage to push them to regulate? I think maybe one edge could be when you were saying like you will not be able to compete with a large language model like this. There is a whole background on the energy consumption of large language model that is huge, and very few people is discussing about it. So this carries an associated cost, which today should be considered incredibly expensive, considering that we are now suffering the climate change. Yeah. So basically, these two questions, the leverage point to push for the regulation on these companies, and how you expect, or do you foresee to enforce in somehow this charter?
Yeah, I mean, let me take the first part of it and then kind of pull it out. Thank you for your question. And, I don't know if you've, so I spent the weekend, it's funny, watching, a company called Metaphysic, where they can literally take your face and pixel by pixel, just by like doing a video of you, replace your face, make you younger, right? There are two ways you can use artificial intelligence. Make you younger, stronger, taller, whatever it is that you want. At the same time, it can also, pixel by pixel, completely change who you are, and it will sound and look identical. Metaphysics, the founder of Metaphysic is actually pushing all of us to go and copyright our images, our voice, right? Because this is the kinds of stuff we kind of talked about this a little bit more in copyright. And in terms of your question, right? I don't know if you saw the controversy where Peter Thiel was saying that to ask large language models to actually pay would make it not a usable business model, to actually pay for copyright. And I just looked at it and I thought, oh, wow. It's like saying, you journalists work for me for free. And then, we'll then, none of us have gotten any money back from anything that's been pulled in. So I think this is part of the reason it is creative destruction. Copyright issues are not really there yet. And yet, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
They're starting. Yes. Yeah, go.
There are already this year in particular, there were two examples in American courts where one of them, I think they said, copyrights are only for human creation, and this was set up in one court in the States, and there is another case, and groups of people presenting a demand for large language model for using their art pieces, and this is happening. This is starting to happen this year, which is, for me, I think, is an excellent example of what could go, where we should go.
Yes, but not fast enough. Right? This is part of the problem. So you asked 2 points. What is the leverage point to push for regulation? What we saw in the AI summit and in President Biden's EO is, if you look at it, actually the US was interesting because there were a lot of things that were there, but what was clear was a preference for already existing large language models. Meaning, at a certain date, you are free. Right? You're not going to be regulated in the same way the younger ones will be, which actually distorts innovation if you think about it that way. I think the second thing is you mentioned potential environmental costs. I actually dove in. They're real. Yes. Okay. But the problem is that well, I guess that environmental cost gets less and less for those who were first. And again, this is some of our things, at least this is what they've said, right? So just to like, what's our leverage point? I think this is the moment. This is the moment where we have to say, stop. Because we're at the point where we're losing agency. We're at the point where we've been torn apart, where there's no shared reality. We're at a point where democracy, a thinking slow process, where journalism, medicine, anything that requires a shared set of facts is no longer tenable because we've torn it apart. And it will get worse with generative AI. So I think the EU, I always laugh because I say the EU is the fastest of the turtles. But we really thank the EU, us in the Global South, because without that, we're completely vulnerable. But we need more. And in many ways, the DSA is regulating the past, not the present and the future.
But there is also an AI Act on this under discussion. So we have, let's say, 5-6 minutes before the family picture. Anna, and then Antonio.
Oh. Yeah, maybe I can also add something, because we are also working on the AI Act or lobbying for transparency, because when we don't know, I mean, first of all, it is critical whether you can actually get remuneration for the data that has been used for training. Because there is an exemption which is called text and data mining, which it's problematic. Yeah. But this must be changed. I mean, text and data mining must be paid, especially if it's done in this huge amount of cases. But more than that, we also need clearance what data is used, because we need to know what the AI systems did use for the training data. So there must be transparency regulation in the AI Act, and that's what we are asking for. But that's what we are lobbying for. But of course, we have also big enemies who don't want that. I don't know, may I say something else or at this point?
But maybe Antonio, if you want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think I reflect on the fact that we're having a very global north discussion here. And, you know, these are tools that are obviously designed as universal. The implications are local. And countries are approaching responses locally, and I think that is significant. Is a significant risk, because AI policy is essentially becoming foreign policy, and you see this very well in the conversation between the US and China. China passes its own legislation, its own licenses for companies that make AI tools that obviously have to abide to socialist core values. So I think the conversation is very universal, and we need to have that conversation now, especially looking at the implications for newsrooms in the Global South. We just launched a program where we're actually helping journalists reporting on AI. You know, a tech journalist in Kenya is the same guy who covers sports and who covers the local affairs and has very little understanding of technology. And we are expecting journalists in the Global South, I mean, I'm just mentioning Kenya because that's where we're doing this work right now, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, to report on the development of technology and the way it will affect their democracy with a level of understanding that is simply not there. And so we're giving them training in understanding how to report, but also, and crucially, to understand the legislative framework that is in place in those countries, or the lack of thereof, so that when legislation comes into place and when big tech companies are lobbying for legislation, they know exactly what to look for.
Thanks. There is a framework where such discussions can happen, probably among many others, which is the Partnership on Information Democracy. We had this morning, Maria, the third summit of the Partnership on Information Democracy, and a new working group has been recently created, and it will help, I think, in many countries, the civil society and journalists to have these types of discussions. You wanted to react,
yeah,
Maria?
like quickly, so we don't leave you like thinking the world is going to end tomorrow, because it isn't. It isn't. I mean, we have to keep going, right? It's bleak, but I think I hope everyone in this room gets up and does. So let me say two things. The first is I run a news group in the Global South. And you know what you actually wind up with? You wind up with either having to get shut down or the threats of going to jail for a century. This is the first generation AI, right? The first contact with AI. It's going to get worse. So if we don't put the guardrails in place, you're going to help fascist governments. I don't use that word lightly. VDEM says 72% now under authoritarian rule. That insidious manipulation with lack of transparency, that must stop. And I'll go to the 10-point action plan that was signed by 300 Nobel laureates, civil society groups. I think several of you here have signed this. 3 points in that. The first, stop surveillance for profit. Second, stop coded bias. Because if you are a woman or LGBTQ+, if you are marginalized in the real world today, you are further marginalized online. The third is journalism as an antidote to tyranny. And that's where the Charter on AI comes in. You asked whether others could do it. Remember, journalists self-regulate. Which industries actually do that, right? I have had to make choices between making money, like a lot of money, or saying no because it's corrupt and it goes against our standards and ethics. We actually say no.
Is there a very last question? And I wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in my union, I have a lot of contact to journalists that have also a very positive view to AI, because what we shouldn't forget is that there will be an untouched area, because AI can only perceive the world without but it can't see, it can't hear, it can't be there. So being there in the scene, being an eyewitness, doing interviews, recording with your device, with your words, with your camera, this is going to be what journalism will do in the future, and we need journalists for that in the future as well. Therefore, I would just like to engage all the journalists to embrace AI and the technology and to use it, because it can avoid annoying stuff like transcribing interviews or translating it or finding a headline or whatever, summarize the text. We all are very happy about that possibilities. And in a way, it's like a knife, you know? A knife is a knife, and you can use it as a kitchen tool, but you can also use it as a murder weapon. And it depends on the human holding the knife. And therefore, it depends on us, how we use AI.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There was one question, which is, where does self-regulation lead? What can be the impact at the end? In fact, there are several ways, several options. Difficult to predict the future. But if we have a look, an ethical charter can impose its impact just by itself. Let's have a look at the Munich Charter in the field of ethics of journalism. It is impactful just because people do believe that these are good principles. And the power of this charter is the strength and the clarity of the principles that decades after decades remain true. There is another option, is that, of course, self-regulatory principles become legislative norms. And if we have a look at what we did together, Maria, with the Partnership on Information and Democracy, we started with a civil society coalition in 2018 with a declaration which was purely civil society. It became an intergovernmental partnership, which is a non-binding international partnership. But at the end, with an implementation body, those principles and all the recommendations that were drafted by the Forum on Information Democracy, not all, but some of them, were really integrated at the end in the European law. So maybe this is an option for the future. There are other aspects, of course, industry standards. So there are different ways to implement it. The question is, of course, that there are a lot of people gathered to really have a leverage effect together. And I think that around these initiatives, there are a lot of different people. And this is a strength that we have to develop, to develop, and to use. So thanks a lot. I suggest we have a family picture that Justinia, Lars, you join us. Please, Arthur, Vincent, Thibault, come with us on the stage so that we have this picture. Thanks to all of you, and please help us bring this charter to another level.
It's like,
I'm waiting for the paper. I ordered it already.
Please stay
I love everything.
This morning.